The Powkiddy V90S is the latest update to the classic V90, one of the first flip retro emulation handheld devices. Originally, I liked the idea of the V90 and its amazingly cheap price, but was a bit underwhelmed by its build quality and power capabilities. However, the improved V90S looks to solve some of these problems, and if successful, could be a fantastic budget alternative to the RG34XX SP. But does the V90S succeed in its mission, or does it fall short? I've been using the Powkiddy V90S for the past week to answer these questions, and this is what happened. Before getting the Powkiddy V90S, I was really excited to see what improvements had been made. When I initially used the original V90, I was a bit underwhelmed. I had just been using the Mii U Mini, and the overall gaming experience of the V90 just felt under par. I always planned to do a video about the V90, but the fact that I never got round to it kind of shows how I felt about it. The biggest disappointment though was how much I wanted to like it. Being one of the only flip options around at the time, and considering how much I love the original GBA SP, I really hoped for more. So that's why I was really excited to get my hands on the upgraded V90S. Initially when I opened the box, the V90S looked quite like the V90. At first I wasn't even sure if they'd used the same body components as the V90. Upon closer inspection though, there are some noticeable differences. The most noticeable is that the V90S is larger than the original V90. It feels chunkier and wider than the GBA SP and the RG34XX2. Following on, the position of the start and select buttons and the front speaker design have also been changed. I like the new look, and it feels like it follows Powkiddy's recent design style. It's nice to see Powkiddy starting to create somewhat of a style, as to date most of their consoles have been a mix of styles that never really felt like they had an identity of their own. Overall, the build quality of the Powkiddy V90S is definitely a noticeable step up from the original. However, I feel like the feel is just a bit off. It's hard to pinpoint, but it just feels a bit plasticky and hollow compared to the likes of the Anbernic flip devices. But only slightly, and considering the V90S is half the price of the RG34XX, I think it's a pretty fair trade-off. From an emulation perspective, the V90 originally struggled with PS1, so I was eager to see what improvements might exist. I had a strong urge to play some Tomb Raider, so I decided to play one of the classics I never got round to completing, Tomb Raider: The Last Revelation. The V90S proved to be a huge improvement over the V90, and played Tomb Raider absolutely brilliantly. I had a lot of fun playing The Last Revelation, and it actually held up really well. The tank controls were a bit challenging, but getting to make Lara jump and swing throughout ancient ruins is as fun as it ever was. Although I would definitely feel a lot more comfortable on a bigger handheld, the V90S still did a great job. Having started this week-long challenge on a Friday, the weekend was round the corner. And this weekend was one of my favourite times of the year. It was the Le Mans 24-hour race. I always love sitting down at 3 PM on the Saturday and watching as much of the race as I can before it ends 24 hours later. It was a great race this year, and my kids watched a lot of it along with me, which left me with an urge to play some Le Mans racing games. The PS1 Le Mans game is brilliant, and I've played it quite a bit, but I've heard the Dreamcast version is even better, so I decided to put that on the V90S and check it out. Le Mans on the Dreamcast is absolutely stunning, and clearly the definitive version. The graphics are beautiful, and the handling is that perfect balance between simulation and pure fun. I spent a lot of time with Le Mans on the Dreamcast throughout the week-long challenge, as I decided to try and complete the full 24-hour race. This is something I've always wanted to do, but obviously never had the time to do it in one sitting. The V90S handled Le Mans and Dreamcast emulation so well to the point that with the help of save states, I thought I could give it a good shot. But this is where I started to see my first issue. And unfortunately, it's the same kind of issue I always see with Powkiddies: the software. More than once, I thought I'd save my progress using save states, only to go back and later found out that it hadn't saved. I never got to the bottom of why this would happen, so I ended up being really vigilant and doing multiple save states at the same time. Furthermore, I really started to notice how poor the battery life is on the V90S. Being on the smaller scale of retro handhelds, I believed I would be able to get a fair few days of gaming out of it before needing a recharge. But it felt like every time I came back to the V90S, it was out of battery and needing charging. It's not that I think the battery life itself is bad, but I think the sleep function is just terrible at saving the juice. Not at all what you want from a pick up and play handheld. Furthermore, the shoulder buttons are way too clicky, even for me, specifically the R2 and L2 buttons. I'm not usually bothered about these things and didn't really mind the RG35XX SP clicky buttons, but for some reason the shoulder buttons really stood out this time. This all left me feeling quite disheartened with the V90S, and all I could really think about was how awesome Dreamcast Le Mans would be on the RG557. In the end, I just couldn't resist the temptation. Towards the end of the challenge, I just had to grab the RG557 and bang out a few laps. A totally different kind of retro handheld, and unfair to compare with the V90S, but it is one of the most recent handhelds I've tested, and the issues of the V90S just made me appreciate even more how much I enjoyed the RG557. On the last day of the challenge, and after having ignored the V90S for a couple of days, I decided to give it one last shot. After all, the V90S gave a really good first impression. The form factor is one of my favourites as it's a flip console. The build quality is definitely an improvement, and the emulation performance is fantastic for the price. But just as I picked it up, the screen flashed to tell me it had no battery again. So I thought, f it, and just put it back down again. Honestly, I'm really sick of disliking Powkiddy. I almost feel like I'm being unfair and sometimes worry that I might come into testing their consoles with a preconceived negativity. But I honestly want to like them, and I always feel like the next one could be the one. However, despite the fact that Powkiddy have improved tremendously when it comes to power and build quality, one issue unfortunately still seems to remain, and that is the software. But I'm optimistic, as software can be improved even on existing consoles. And with decent firmware upgrades, the V90S could become one of, if not the best, and certainly the most budget-friendly flip console in a year where flip consoles are big news. If you want to get your hands on the Powkiddy V90S, then links are in the description below. But if you want to check out the RG34XXSP, which could be the best GBASP clone yet, then stay subscribed for the next episode.